Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of my videos, and today I've got a really beautiful study by the composer Leonid Kubell. He was a very famous Russian composer. He produced many beautiful Endgame studies. You can actually find a copy of a lot, or basically a composition of all of his different Endgame puzzles in a book by Timothy Whitworth. That was published in 1932. This particular position is really fascinating because in this particular position it is in fact white who's going to be winning in this particular position, and that's despite the fact that he is down materially. He's got essentially a knight and a pawn versus a queen. How is this possible? Well, we'll find out how white is able to win this and able to force different interesting continuations that black has to go into. Just very quickly, in this particular position, just to kind of give you a helpful hint, for white here we need to try find a lot of different forcing moves. The problem we have for white is quite simply this black queen at any point can manage to throw in some sort of perpetual check to try and keep the position drawn. So it's vital, as I say, in this particular endgame that we keep finding different forcing moves to try and win this particular position. Okay, let's have a look at the solution. If you haven't already, make sure you pause the video and see if you can solve it, but I'm going to go into the solution now. So it starts with the move b7 check, so pretty straightforward, a forcing move, forcing black to go up the board. This is the only move. Now we have another strong forcing move here, the move knight to c6 with check. Of course, this is now allowing us to potentially promote our pawn next move, so a pretty decent looking move here. Now there's a couple of really interesting continuations. The first one I think is interesting because there's a very nice continuation to this. If, let's say, the king comes to b6, we of course can carry out our plan of promoting our pawn to a king. Now you might be asking yourself, well, surely this just draws, right? The king comes to this square, you know, okay, I might throw a few checks, but it looks still fine. The material's still equal in this position. The problem here is white has a really strong move, and that is the move queen to b7. But you've got to be very careful here. When I was trying to go through my analysis at this point, if the queen were to come to c7, this would in fact be a draw. Why is that so? The problem with this is now this allows the king to come to this particular square where it can get next to his black queen, and then there's not really going to be much in the position. So white essentially just has to keep throwing a load of checks against black here and just have a drawn position. So that doesn't quite work, but this move is very key. Queen to b7, very important. The problem now for black is he hasn't got these squares to go to where he can then basically as a stepping stone get towards the black queen. So now the problem for black is only legal move king to d6, after which we can now play the move queen to d7 with check. You can see here now that black queen will be lost and will be winning this particular position. So going back, I still think that's quite an interesting variation, despite the fact that I don't think it's the strongest move that black can play here. So going back to this point now, so instead of this, the other legal move that black can play in this position is the move king to a6. Now here, this is where things get very interesting. If, let's say, we were foolish enough to just promote here on b8, there's a problem with this move. Black can just throw a flurry of checks against the white king. Just to give you an example, you can come to h3, which is the only checking square here, and wherever this king moves to, we're just going to keep throwing a load of checks against him. And eventually we'll just get to a point, once the king goes a little bit too far astray, we can then throw in a fork against himself and the knight. There's nothing that white can do in this position. Unfortunately, black just has too many checks for white to deal with, and therefore it'll be a draw. So we've got to be very careful. We can't play a move like this. So again, it comes back to our main principle in these particular studies, sometimes just finding forcing moves. Well, what is more forcing than moving this pawn forward, but instead of turning it to a queen, we instead choose a knight. That comes with check. What a move. Very, very beautiful move this. So now the king has to go somewhere again. But where does he go to? Let's first have a quick look at what happens. Well, actually, sorry, I say that. There's only one legal move in this position, sorry. So he has to come to b6. b6 is the only move he can go to. And now we can throw in another forcing move here. Another check. Knight to d7 check. And here white is going to be winning very, very soon. The problem for black is quite simply, after the king takes on c6, we can now fork both the king and the queen. But just going back, he doesn't have to necessarily take this knight at this point. Instead, he could decide to just move his king back to a6. How does white make progress here? Well, quite simply, after a6 we can just play our knight to c5. We're winning the queen here in this position, and we've got a nice comfortable endgame to win here as well. Going back once more, another move that black could try and see if he can force the draw is giving up his queen on d7. Again, after king takes here, there's not really any problems for white in this position. He's going to slowly round up this pawn on b5 and just have a winning position here. So going back, instead of all this, let's go look at the critical variation. After this move, there's still a little bit of work for white to do in this position, and as I say, it still requires a little bit of technique to convert this. So after we throw in the check to obviously win the queen, king comes to d5, we now take on d3, black can now play the move c4. It's now going after this knight. And yeah, as I say, we can't really move this knight away, we're going to lose this pawn, so we have to start moving our king towards this position. So as I say, it requires lots of calculation here, but it's a very, very beautiful end and very satisfying end to this solution. So king comes to b7, starting to move over, king takes on d3. After we move our king to a6, king to c4, we now have king to a5. We reach a position, this is known as a trebuchet position in a king and pawn ending. And the problem for black is because he is the king that came first to this particular structure, he is in fact now losing because it's now black to move. And unfortunately, black has got no useful moves in this position. If, let's say, he were to come to, I don't know, a move, a square like b3, we simply take this pawn here. We're going to be pushing the pawn up the board. Coming back, if he, let's say, he goes to d5 to maybe try and get in front, we can take here very simply. We can now just maintain the opposition, keep our king in front of our white pawn, and eventually we'll hope to get to one of these three major squares. The 7th rank, very important when you're trying to promote pawns, as it will allow you to create a safe passageway for your pawn to then promote. A very, very nice solution and a very, very beautiful puzzle. So as I say, just to kind of recap, the trick with this particular puzzle, find lots of forcing moves. Try and find ways that you can bully the black king around the board, just like we saw here, throwing in a check, keeping the checks coming with the knight promotion, and then after a few more moves, then winning the black queen. Very, very nice solution. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Lots of things to learn for endgame players or people who want to get into sort of endgames, and I think it's quite a nice, I guess, although it's a study, it does provide some practical information around how to win these particular endgames. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. If you like the videos, as I say, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so I do have a lot of different composition puzzles and endgame studies just like this one. Alright, take care, bye bye.